Live.
All right, welcome back, everyone. 10:30. Continuing conversation on S20P or D3. Whoa, tongue twister. An act relating to the use of synthetic media in elections. And we're gonna have a little conversation with council. Council, how are you?
Good morning. Dago Office of Legislative Counsel, S23. What can we talk about?
So, as we were noodling on this more, some of the, I don't want to speak for them directly, but some of the committee members were, still had the existing lawsuits that were pending in other states that had done this, move forward with legislation similar to this, and how those were navigating and still waiting on decisions. And it seemed that there was a sense of some members that they wanted to wait to see what happens with some of these lawsuits before guiding our decision to not move forward now and possibly wind up in a litigious situation with the state of Vermont with the language. Is that an accurate assessment from some members? So, again, not wanting to speak directly for folks, please feel free. I guess I just want to open it up to a formally informal discussion right now with the table. Rep. Waters Evans, then I got Coffin.
I believe Randolph was
Jay.
first. Yes.
Thank you. Ranking member, oh my gosh, what a warm welcome back. I am curious, why would we not do something? Like, what's that? What's the rationale for like pumping, like, why don't we throw something into the mix?
That was the
Do we have
sense.
principles or?
Well, I'll let some of the other members, because I actually just kind of framed it. Rep. Waters Evans.
Well, this is what I was going to say. I know people have some concerns about the lawsuits. Unfortunately, when I was doing some research to see if we could get somebody in here from another state to talk to us about those, we have reached a few roadblocks. The first being that I think, which is important, is that this is new legislation, right, for everybody. It's like fairly recent in the last couple of years. Some of them don't even take effect, the laws that have been passed. There are 6 states that have similar legislation to what we are trying to pass, which is a disclosure within the time period of an election. And either if they have had some kind of legal action, they can't talk about it because it's ongoing, so that we can't get testimony from them, or nothing has happened yet, or they passed the legislation, but it hasn't really taken effect or had time to go through an election cycle where it was relevant yet to what was happening. So in my opinion, in situations like this, where it's about a fairly new technology, which we know is moving rapidly, if we wait for these things to happen, you know what I mean, wait for other lawsuits, it could be a couple of years. And I think the intent is to stop these things now because they've already been happening. And my thought is that lucky us, we can change the laws if they're not working. That's what we can do all the time. We can come back next year if something happens and say, oh, wait, that didn't work, or something happened in another state. And now we see a little red flag popped up somewhere that we can address here before it happens here. I think, I don't know, it seems more and more of a concern as time goes by. I think we've seen things happen with elections that are somewhat unsettling. And that the possibility for influence of our elections is growing and is becoming, scary, for lack of a better word. It's a little scary, and I think that it's important that we move this forward. That's how I think about it.
Rep. Hoover, then Stone.
I fundamentally agree that the issue is important. I would assume if we pass something and a suit was filed, one of the primary court reactions would be to stay the implementation. So we run up against a time clock in any event. Okay.
So if somebody were to challenge the constitutionality of the law, which could happen, the court would possibly issue a preliminary injunction. You have to show irreparable harm, which is a pretty high standard, but that is it's definitely a possibility with this law. We just don't know, right?
So based on the experiences of other jurisdictions, rather get it right than not get it right. Or as right as possible.
So you mean,
See what happens.
Rep Stone, then Rep Coffin.
I would just reiterate what Rep. Waters Evans said. I mean, I've gone to numerous conferences over the past year where this has been brought up as a present concern, not one that is like coming to us in 5 years, like it's already happening. It's already happening. I'm sure that many of us around this table could talk about some of the phone calls or text messages that we've received, just the last elections, whether it be presidential or whatever, trying to influence that election. So I too would rather try to, stay on top of it versus waiting 3-5 years and then be even further behind, because we're already behind. We are already behind. This technology is here and has been here and is already doing things to influence elections in a negative way.
Rep Pistol. Oh, I'm sorry, Rep Coffin, then Rep Pistol.
Again, my concern is if we pass something that's not good just to get something done, I'm not saying this legislation isn't a good idea. It has merit, but if we pass something that opens up Vermont to another potential lawsuit, Vermont will try to defend this law and spend money doing that. And we won't change anything until whether we've won or lost the lawsuit. We should wait to give some time to see what happens with these other lawsuits. If there's movement on them, if there's a stay, whichever it is, to at least give us a chance to craft something that will stand up to the challenges without passing something that could potentially have us that, given what's happening, could get us sued. We are already in enough lawsuits from passing legislation. We don't need to add to that caseload.
Pistol. Cooper.
Just refresh my memory so I can get my notes straight here. The yellow highlighted areas is stuff that we have added or?
Is that a question for me?
Yes.
So are you looking at 3.2?
Mhm.
Yes, so that is language that I added, or my office, Tim Devlin also added some language at the end. So yes, those changes were made to address some of what the courts have said. Can't make it perfect, but that was my attempt to say, look, we're trying to be as careful as we can, but again, you never know, right?
Right. And then the other part of the question is the language that we're using is we took from another state that's already using this, correct?
So it was initially when it was introduced, it was model language for the most part that we crafted a little bit, but mostly model language. Like this whole deceptive and fraudulent synthetic media, that is the language used throughout the states typically. But through these iterations, 3.2, it's becoming more and more unique to Vermont. Again, mostly to address what the courts have said so far. Not that it's bulletproof, but.
Rep Hoover.
I guess just in the spirit of general discussion, I'm curious to inquire with members of the committee who believe that this bill is, quote, not good. What are the components that are bad or? I don't know why the legislature would ever be timid about passing policy in anticipation of judicial judgment. I mean, we should never refrain from setting a standard because we believe that the courts aren't going to look kindly on. The relationship between the two branches is very much evolutionary, right? Like precedent is based on these types of developments. If we pass a policy, somebody says this doesn't pass constitutional muster. They take the proper channels and then, the judicial actors, judges, so on, lawyers, they have an impact on the outcome of that decision. And then maybe it changes the policy, maybe it doesn't, but that should never be a reason why we don't do something, particularly when it's regarding something so unknown that we know enough about that we should really help pioneer the standard. If other states are leading or not, that doesn't really matter. Those courts could come out with decisions that influence the way that we craft the policy, but like, why wouldn't we want to get involved in ahead of it? So I don't know if anybody wants to reply, but let's make the bill good. You can pass it.
Rep. Waters Evans.
I think, I agree with Rep. Hooper. I think boldness is exactly what we need right now, especially in a situation where there are a lot of unknowns. I think we have the benefit of having other states that have passed these laws. And we will then have the benefit of seeing what happens with them as they go along. And if we need to adjust next session, 3 sessions from now, whatever it is, we will have those, they're always going to be ahead of us in line as far as those things are concerned. So we can always learn from what is happening in other states. I also, really worry all the time whenever we talk about stuff like this, about people's First Amendment rights and making sure that we're not curtailing those or stomping on them or restraining free speech in any way. And that's like a primary concern when it comes to this stuff. And for me, this bill doesn't seem to cross that line into limiting it. But if it's a challenge, then, that's what we face. We do this all the time. We pass laws and then people don't like them. And then there are court stuff. It's like the reason for the existence of the system, constructed as it is.
So I saw 2 hands come up pretty much at the same time here. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and I would just like to say, like, what we do know is this is happening.
Right.
Like, we know it's happening. It's been happening. So I would rather like base laws on something we know is happening instead of not passing laws because of what we think may happen or may not. And I do think that this legislation that we have is a good first step. I don't think it's the end all be all. We're going to have to evolve as this technology evolves. But I do think it's a good balance of protecting free expression while safeguarding folks from manipulation. And I could see us in the future. I don't know if this would come through this committee, but working on education, because that's going to be an important component of this for the public, for people who are involved in elections, to understand what is a deep fake. Heck, what is AI? What is that even? So I do think this is the first step. It's not the end all be all. And it's going to require multifaceted, multi-step approach, but we have to start somewhere because we are already behind.
No, I totally agree with that. I just want to jump in real quick and say I've always believed that this was a very, very, very first necessary and overdue first step. So I want to make that personal point for me very clear. What was the timeline prior that we landed on to the election? What was the
9 days.
90 days? And that is. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. Uber.
Yeah, I got a timeline question. What is our timeline for this bill? Do we have to get it out by a certain day?
Well, I mean, there are instances of amendments, so it's got to go back over, they concur, it's conference. And so that's just the process. I mean, we do have a notable amount of calendar left.
Yeah,
So
well,
I'm
among,
not worried about the timeline. I just want to have consensus.
good, okay, well, that's.
Yeah.
Among other things that this committee ought to always be sensitive to is the politicization of a certain issue. This is one of those ones. We wouldn't want the outcome of next election to have implications for like what we decide. Like, we wouldn't want people to say, oh, it's only because that happened that you guys are now creating this policy. It'd be better to do it ahead of the next election. Sooner better.
Rep. Nugent, then Rep. Snow.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the mechanism or how enforcement's contemplated currently. Would it be reporting by other campaigns or how?
So if the bill were to pass, how would, so, you know, it could be, I use whistleblower, that's not correct. It can be anybody that alerts the AG's office, hey, this person has shared a video that is a deep fake of this candidate. It could be just anybody, right? Saying that Rep. Nugent has been defamed through an AI ad. I want you to take a look at it. And the AG, they can decline to take a look at it, right? You can't pursue that as an individual. You as the candidate could request an injunction through this bill that says, I want this ad to stop, all right, take this ad down. So there's that aspect. But if it's a third party, whether it's a person, family member that sees it, a friend, they'd have to alert the AG's office or the state's attorney's office, and it would be up to them to enforce it. And they may not have the resources, and they may decide not to. That's their call.
Is there anything in the existing law stopping campaigns from pointing this out publicly now?
From pointing out that this ad is AI and it's defaming. No, you have the freedom to do that. And there's the, in general defamation, you could, right, hold somebody accountable if they defame you, right? That's kind of an underlying thing that we all have. That is a okay freedom of speech violation, if that makes sense. Like it's not okay to defame somebody, right? You cannot produce speech that harms someone's reputation and it's false, right? So this kind of, in a way, and I tried to shape the amendment here, that this AI is kind of defaming either the person or it's unduly influencing an election, which is not defamation, right? And that's kind of the other side of it. So yes, you can today, without this bill, you could call out that this is fake and you could maybe on Facebook click a button that says inappropriate or whatever it says, right? But then it'd be up to Facebook to determine this is inappropriate or against our guidelines, right?
That's one more.
And that takes, sorry, I'm jumping in because I've done that before. It takes time. And it doesn't immediately take things down. It can take days. But
Rep. Snow.
Can you just tell me why we're referencing Washington County? Like, referencing Washington County. And then,
Oh, you're looking at on page 5, the civil investigations.
Yeah.
So this came from, this is my colleague Tim Devlin added this. This came from another section that the AG's office requested be included in the bill to allow them to investigate.
AG office is in Washington County.
Well, no, not necessarily. No, this language is directly from that other statute that references Washington County. It says because if such person is a non-resident or no place of business. So that's kind of the default county.
Oh, okay,
Because it's the capital.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, just sure. I just
Sure,
wanted to make
yeah.
sure it wasn't singled out to just Washington.
No. If somebody produces
Workload shift.
Yeah.
if somebody produces a video that lives in Texas, right?
Yeah.
They would be a non-resident, so they'd be
For this.
held accountable in Washington County. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep. Yeah.
Get away with whatever.
Great question. I just learned something. Rep. Waters.
I want to touch on what Rep. Stone just said, which is that leaving these things to these corporations like Meta to decide or Alphabet or whatever to decide like what's okay and what isn't and what's allowed and what's not and what's fake and what isn't, it's so beyond okay to me. I can't even deal with it. I feel like that is like probably even more than anything else, like the reason why we need to take control of it and make a decision for Vermonters that's not relying on these people who have like clearly demonstrated over and over again that they're interested in like personal wealth and power and control, and that it goes hand in hand with manipulating elections.
Right.
And I just, what?
No. Ed Kay was raised her hand. I was
Oh,
saying, I think,
okay.
Keith first. No, please finish. Yeah.
Well, I know, but now my tirade has been interrupted. What else was I gonna say?
Roach tried.
I don't know. I'm fully in support of this. And I really did start out saying that I was really, I had a lot of trepidation about it, but the more we talk about it, the more I think it's imperative that we do it. I mean, I'm not gonna say it right now, but if someone made a motion, because it is scheduled for a possible vote, I'd be all for it.
Rep. Bridget, then so.
I was wondering if you had a sense of how long these cases take to prosecute and like what the standard is. I think you mentioned it before, but of like subjective versus objective reasonable person.
So it depends what the case is, right? I mentioned last time the Minnesota case where it was a representative of Minnesota, a state representative that voted for the bill, and now she was against it, right? That case was handled quickly because she didn't have standing. She wasn't harmed by the law yet. So in California, that person did have standing, the guy that makes these fake videos, like, and he's pretty prolific. He claimed it was parody. California is required even on parody videos. So you have the disclaimer. This bill does not. That's one difference, right, between the California bill and this one. So it depends on what the issue is. If someone in Vermont were to be held civilly accountable and pay a fine, they would have standing, right? Because they would say the bill is unconstitutional. Like, I don't want to pay this fine. Or if they just pay the fine, there really wouldn't be a test of the law, right? So you're going to have somebody be harmed by this law. They pay a fine, a penalty, and they challenge it. And that's when you would know. And that could take, I'm sorry, I can't tell you. It could take 6 months. It could take 2 years. Now in California, I think there is an appeal. So California, we may know more this time next year, but I can't say for sure because then it may get appealed again to the California Supreme Court or to the it'd be the US Supreme Court because it's a federal case, but I can't give you a specific timeline. Yeah.
I'll go. Sure. I also just wanted to give a point of information as somebody who is deeply embedded in the social media stuff. Like when you also say like, oh, well, there are community guidelines, there are actually social media platforms that do not have community guidelines. One of them is BitChute, BITCHUTE, and it literally, like its whole platform is free expression. There are no community guidelines. So people could be putting stuff on there saying, hey, the election got moved to Wednesday morning instead of Tuesday because there's a flood watch happening or something seriously, and there's no way to hold them accountable. And again, if we are going to say that like community guidelines rules things, then what are we going to do? Abolish government, the next thing and let Mark Zuckerberg run everything in this building? No, I just really dangerous slippery slope. But I just wanted to say that as someone who's really in the social media world, not all platforms even have community guidelines, and they pride themselves on that, which is scary. And they can say whatever they want. Influence elections.
So the Senate, thanks, you're sure. So the Senate amended this?
I mean,
bill?
technically it's me right now.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, he's back. I had 1 second.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So they have amendments, right? Or what's the status? You have to send it back to the Senate.
This is going back regardless of what. We would, the changes, yes.
And if they agree, then we don't get it back.
Well, yes. If they concur, it doesn't. And I think we're at a stage right now where if they didn't concur, it was another instance of amendment, then we're going to conference. Yeah. Rep. Burlington.
So you mentioned, my fear is not that we, as Scott said, wait 3 or 4 or 5 years to do something. Say we do something next year, if there's something that really comes out of court that challenges what we have on the page here. But my real fear is that stuff gets sent to and it's up through the court where it's out of our control. If the feds decide to take it, it's at their time too, which could be a long time.
I mean, just the process, maybe this is what you all were speaking to, I was getting something sent to judiciary with Autumn. I mean, the Senate has already sent it over to us. It is an S-bill. We do work on it briskly in the beginning of January. And are we on passage? We're on passage.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in the world of a theoretical timeline, we could get this voted out with a clean understanding of where the chips fall in the off session in January, get this on the governor's desk to sign and have it hit the mark to be action ready for the next cycle. So that timeline does exist if we hold true to that desire to see what happens just in the off session. So the calendar exists, yes.
So just to clarify, that would be taking the bill for this session and waiting for next session. And we just heard that lawsuits could take 6 months or they could take 6 years.
Correct.
So it's going back to me saying, and what you said more eloquently is we are going to be timid because of the unknown instead of being bold because of the known. That's my opinion. But it's like, what is gonna change in 6 months? We could come back and these lawsuits could still be in litigation, or they could be at a point where they're not allowed to share because they're in the middle of litigation. So, it's. Yeah,
Pistol, then Hoover.
Do we know what the Senate vote was on this before they passed it back to us?
Let's see.
I'm looking it up right now, 500.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was a strong vote. I don't even know if this hold on the floor.
No, I don't believe
No,
that.
I don't think so.
I'll tell you, there was that committee that had a couple members who really wanted to ban all of these ads, and I really had to talk them out of that. It's like this is not constitutional, like just like you can't do that. And they still wanted to do it, but just not a majority, just a couple members. So, there's another extreme you could go here and you could still do that, but I would warn you, that's not constitutional, but I can't stop you, obviously, from doing what you want to do. It's close.
Are we, so Sandy, then I had Jay, then I had Mary Catherine again. If you want to just that's a follow-up question to here, go ahead.
no, I was just saying again, I'm just reiterating, I think this bill, like, especially when you look at like how far we could go, I would just say, I think this is a really good balance of allowing free expression while preventing manipulation. And it's a really good first step. Like you look at it and we could do all kinds of stuff, but I think it's why you got a 5-0 vote. Is because it's not wild one way or the other. It's a good in between and it allows us space to add on or take away in the following years, which I bet we'll have to do because this technology is ever changing. I think it's a safe.
I totally agree with you there. Yeah.
I don't think waiting is gonna change it. It's a good, clean, safe spot to start. That's my case.
Right, and as I reiterate, the sooner the better argument that it sounds like Stone and Waters Evans are pressing with me. I have to also acknowledge that BL made a pretty good argument, I think, about like, well, we're stuck with what we do. So like, flesh that out a little more. I like, again, invite the critics of this current iteration of the policy to talk about what is not good.
We're gonna go Nugent then BL.
I think, like, this is a comment, but I'm kind of open to waiting, and making sure that this is constitutionally sound before we do anything, on the theory that people are able to speak that and point these things out now. And I think that the strongest push against, fraudulent speech or, lies is people standing up and saying the opposite or speaking the truth. And that's always been the strength of American democracy. We hate when people say stuff that's not true, but the strength comes from saying that it's not true, speaking up for that rather than trying to legislate speech, perhaps possibly in a way that might run afoul of the Constitution. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I'm gonna go Rep. Coffin, then Rep. Hooper of Burlington, but I do want to say in Rep. Boyden's absence, she's a reporter of the bill and she is one of the members who expressed some of the trepidation yesterday. So I just want to cite that without speaking to it specifically. So I want to talk to her as a reporter of the bill before we make any firm decisions. I've got Rep. Coffin, then Hooper of Burlington, then Waters Evans.
And again, my concerns are the constitutionality of it, and First Amendment rights. I understand that people can make fake videos, people can make false statements now. And regardless how that works out, once it's out there, you still have to defend and say, this wasn't true, or this was true, or that wasn't me. But there are ways to report it now, even if they're not the fastest. If we start legislating the restriction on free speech, that's worrisome to me.
Just to be clear, I don't have a problem with the words on the page or moving it forward beyond the point that it's probably going to be challenged no matter what. Is in your experience and research, as any jurisdiction created something like this that hasn't been challenged? I see this as a hanging on a hook.
So out of the 20 so states that have done something like this, I showed you the ones that have been challenged. There's 3 or 4 of them. So a majority have not been. That does not mean they won't be, but because it's so new and because frankly, they may not be citing people. These states may not be actually finding people. They might find it difficult to enforce. So like I mentioned before, standing, if you don't fine anybody, you can't challenge the law. I don't know that for sure. I'm just giving you a reason. So I want to answer your question, but say that doesn't mean the law is okay.
Yeah.
It just means that there may not be much to challenge it. So in the majority of states, the law is still active and constitutional until it's said otherwise.
I agree with the other Hooper. Let's start up the flagpole and see where it goes. Consider that a motion.
You're making a motion right now? We would need to, I would respectfully want to wait for Lisa and I, would also respectfully like to wait for the reporter.
Withdraw.
Rep. Waters Evans.
All right, well, the clerk is not going to be back until next week. So which we knew, so why it was scheduled for a vote for today, I'm not sure. That's fine. We can wait for them to come back. The other thing I wanted to point out was that this is not about, a portion of it is about restricting or a concern about restricting free speech. This is very much in the lane of influencing the outcome of an election. It's not about anything else. It's like pretty specific. It's not like you can't make a deep fake video, period. It's about, maliciously, intentionally, with purpose, trying to change the outcome of an election by doing something deceptive that is going to influence voters with a falsehood. And therefore, that would be the real disenfranchisement, in my opinion, is allowing people to lead voters astray on purpose. It's just about elections. It's not about anything else. And you know what, if the election's in November and in June, you want to make a deep fake video, you can go for it. You just can't do it in the 90 days before the election. I feel like that's where the balance is. And I don't know, it seems critical to me. It's so narrow in its scope of what it's limiting, both with the time period and, the circumstances of what those deepfake videos are doing. technology is moving so rapidly, like this could not even be a thing in 3 years because now all of a sudden they're just like holograms walking around doing stuff. I don't know. I told you, I don't know how electricity works. So that is a problem for me with the technology, but at least I understand this part, which is like it moves really quickly. And I fear that waiting is going to hamper us in some way, more so than taking action now.
Rep Hoover, then Stone, then Morgan.
I think we should meticulously tinker on this policy for as many hours as it takes to make it something that we think is constitutionally sound. The reason is because I think that not doing something is a greater affront to the sanctity of our Constitution at large than worrying about whether this insults one amendment. If information can just be anything and everybody can, like, I remember, I don't know, probably about 5 years ago, somebody saying to me, yeah, my Facebook post was a whole bunch of misinformation. But guess what? I know it's wrong, but I like it. It's my opinion. I said, okay, what? You're telling me that you can take misinformation and embrace it as opinion? That's the new normal? What? We have to be prudent about stuff like this. Can't be. So let's schedule more.
I got Stone, then I got Morgan, then I got Waters Evans.
I just feel like if we drew a picture of what we're talking about right now, we would look like ostriches with our heads in the sand. Because that is what is happening, like using infinitive space in phrases, I think that's the right term for English, whatever, like, you know, we are going to need to be ahead of it. It's like, y'all, we're already behind. Like this example it's used, like I will say, like in my family, with my friends, like there's already mistrust about information that comes out about elections around election time. This is already happening. I know I'm just like saying the same thing over and over, but when we use futuristic terms, it's making me want to bang my head up against the desk because I'm like, y'all, it's already happening. It's already happening. We are already behind. We are behind, period. And we're going to be further behind with each passing day. So, and this isn't made up. Like, in the off session, I went to conferences. I went to the Election Science Reform Conference in LA. This was a huge topic of conversation for people who work, you know, as clerks, as election science data analysts. Like this was the biggest topic because it's already happened, and a lot of states are trying to get ahead of it. And maybe they not get it perfect, but it's better than having our head in the sand like a bunch of ostriches, which is what we look like if we don't do something. Anyway,
Morgan,
I digress.
Rep Waters Evans, then Rep Nugent.
I would go back to what DL said constitutionally. It does concern me. I hear what everybody's saying. I respect what everybody's saying. And I don't know if this is rampant here, maybe maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe it's been used against me. I don't know. It's been used against all of us. I don't know. But at the very least, I think we have time because of the extended session. We can wait till next week. This isn't gonna die in the vine just because we wait till next week to get Lisa and Lucy back in here. I think that's a reasonable position to take, at least do that due diligence. So we wait and deliver it one more time, as much as I hate dragging stuff out, because I think we should be looking to wrap things up and get out of here, as we all probably are feeling. But this one, I'd be okay with a measured approach in that regard.
I mean, I'm very, very warm to the idea of finding a consensus on this thing. So, I mean, I'm just working from.
I won't rule it out.
Of,
I'd rather wait, but I won't rule it out. I'm open to either direction, but I'm leaning no, but I'm open.
and Nugent, and then did you have a handout after Kate?
Yeah.
Okay. And then.
Yeah, I think saying something similar to Rep. Morgan, actually, just that it seems like, at least for me, like I support the concept and the idea of it, and I'm okay with an extended timeline, whether that's more debate now or said that we need to wait a little bit longer.
I feel like we've heard from a zillion witnesses. Senate heard from a zillion witnesses. We just heard from Ledge Council that out of the 20 states that have these, only 3 or 4 have had a challenge. So I'm wondering if people are concerned, who else do we need to hear from that would either answer your questions or alleviate your concerns or even heighten your concerns and kind of support what your worries are? I've been looking, for days to find people who can testify on this, and it's, more than days, a couple weeks. And I feel like we're starting to run out of people who can really speak on it. So, and I don't mean this in like, yeah, what do you want kind of way, but I really want to know, and you don't have to tell me right now.
I think that's spoke us and then
Yeah.
thoughts on that are just simply, I don't think we need to have any more witnesses, any more testimony, or any here for Rick anymore. Just,
Thank you, been dismissed.
It's just a quick committee. This when I could find quick might be a half hour,
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, that would be my position, but I think that's where the chair is kind of, I think that's what.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for him, but I think that's what I heard from him.
That makes sense. I was just thinking like years or waiting until after these lawsuits, like, oh my God, like I don't wanna wait.
No, I mean, talk about it next week, but I mean, still could say on the no, but it doesn't mean I don't have to open the discussion.
I tend to agree, we should take the time to make sure that we get a full vote.
yeah,
And if we can get a consensus, that'd be nice. If it takes us into next week, that's just fine.
Not next year.
Not next year, next week. I get the feeling that there's enough,
I could make a decision.
there's a strong enough will to have something pass out of this committee that I have no doubt that will happen. I do wonder though, you referred to the extremes that we could take that you would say are just outright unconstitutional. I'm sorry for not knowing what you're referring to, but what would those be again?
So you have at least 2 states. Texas was deemed unconstitutional. There's also one of the first states to try this, and they had like a really wide-ranging ban on deceptive advertising. Anyway, so Minnesota has basically also banned these AI ads. There's not like a 90-day thing, it's just they're banned, right? So that one has not successfully been challenged yet, so it's still law in Minnesota.
Okay.
I imagine when it does get challenged, it would be deemed unconstitutional. That's one extreme, banning these ads, right?
Okay.
The other, well, there's no really other extreme. The other extreme is not doing anything, right? Which is the current status is where you don't regulate the ads. No. I don't mean to put that as extreme, but like you have two,
Oh, I understand.
2 extreme ends of the spectrum.
And additionally, I beg your pardon, I had asked you for false advertisement laws, and I'm sure you came back and explained that.
Not yet.
Not yet?
This is my first time back. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Then I would encourage more. I'd love.
False advertising.
Because I get the feeling that there could be some teeth to an argument that would link politicians with the sort of corporate entities and the various business brands and other entities that put money into elections. There's a link there that would potentially give light to an argument about false advertisement in politics, politicians. Like we shouldn't be allowed to go out there and sell something that isn't real or people on our behalf. And so, I mean, I wonder if that has implications for a certain Supreme Court decision about money in politics. That's like a really lengthy, I mean, wouldn't it be interesting if that would go through the court system and somebody could make an argument that, oh, money isn't free speech and corporations aren't people. Man, that would be cool.
technically, yeah.
According to a certain group of 9 people who were selected by a myriad of presidents. Whatever that. If it were up to me, I'd say text campaigning should be illegal, Facebook advertising should be illegal. It's just a bunch of BS. And I really wish people would return to the sort of like, hey, I'm running for office. I'm at your door and I'm gonna tell you who I am in earnest.
So if I may, I can give a quick, so the false advertising, keep in mind, that's to protect consumers, right, from buying something that they were tricked into buying, right, through deceptive means. When you're talking about political communication, that's a whole different ballgame. So you've all seen the ads that are misleading, right? They put them in black and white and they slow down the speech or they make the candidate fall down, right? Yeah, it's like, you're given wide latitude in advertising political speech. And that's why I'm like red flag, like you're doing something that normally you shouldn't be doing, right? I've been saying that since the bill came in here. However, election integrity is like really important. And the courts have said that in every case they've decided, they said, this is really important. Like of all the interests you can regulate, like this is one of them, elections, right? So there's a line that you can't cross. And in my opinion, banning the ads is one of those lines. But false advertising, I don't think the connection is there for this because you're not advertising a product, you're advertising yourself or an issue, something, right? And I could come back with that's kind of what I want to know. Like, you want me to come back with examples of what current laws are on false advertising of products? I just don't think it would apply to this.
No.
It's not.
It's not the same.
And we even touched on this, I think, in the very like early stages of this conversation, the difference between like a marketable product for a consumer and what a political candidate
Well, I
is.
guess the argument that I'm suggesting is that politicians are almost, in all cases at this point, an extension of corporate branding.
I would agree that you're marketing, you are marketing a product that is the candidate, yes. And it is very much a campaign, it's very much an overlay of a sales and marketing tactic, yes. But it is not a good or service in its rawest consumer sense, I believe, is what council is alluding to.
Right, we're not selling products that are faulty. Like, we are selling a whole bunch of.
Grab Water Jones.
We're not banning these. Rick just said it, banning them is crossing a line that we shouldn't cross. We are already required to disclose, anyone's required to disclose when they create a political ad of any kind, who paid for it.
Mhm.
Right?
If it's done by the campaign,
Right.
right?
So if we have to, what about then, what's the rule then if like I have Citizens for Shea who really want to send out mailers everywhere in my support, they don't have to disclose who paid for it or who's sending it out?
So I can't speak to state law, federal law,
Yeah.
You have PACs
Yeah.
and those groups aren't under the same regulations that a candidate for election is.
Yeah,
So there may be some kind of disclosure,
Yeah.
but it's not that I paid for this message, I endorse this message. Those are federal laws that apply to candidates. So for a PAC or some kind of interest group that supports a candidate, or they're usually issue based, that's also something to keep in
Yeah.
mind, is a lot of these are issue based that may or may not support a specific candidate. They wouldn't have, obviously language saying that I endorse this message or this endorses this candidate because they can't be associated with the candidate, right? Does that answer your?
yeah, it does.
Okay.
I guess my point is that there are already parameters set around certain things relating to election materials. This, in my mind, is just an extension of that or a different form of it. It's just a disclosure. I mean, not just, but it is a disclosure. It's not saying you can't do it. It's simply saying in those 90 days, you must disclose that it is manipulated media. Yeah, that's right.
Rep. Hoover?
We've been talking about this mostly in the context of somebody putting something up that is harmful to the candidate. Does the language in page 1 down on 15 unduly influence the outcome of election cover a candidate doing, if I put an ad up of myself rescuing an infant from the middle of a frozen lake?
What was the? Could you just speak up?
I'd say if I put something out of myself rescuing an infant from a frozen lake, then it's completely generated. That's this covered also.
Well, yes, but it would have your consent, I assume. So on line 19 of that same page, it says without the consent of the candidate.
Oh.
So if you make your own, if Chair Byron makes an ad where he's a power lifter and he's powerlifting democracy, I don't know. Like, and it's AI generated, he could do that without the disclosure because he would have consented, right, to the ad. If I made that ad, within powerlifting, he maybe think it's cool. Like, this is a great ad. Rick, thank you. He wouldn't, but it would be a violation because I would not have his consent. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna stop yelling after this. I'm just gonna say one more thing, which is just to touch on what Rep. Hooper of Burlington just said, which is that this, yes, I'm glad that it is protecting the candidates from all of the stuff, but I just wanted to circle back to the fact that it is protecting the voters. The people who are voting. It's for them.
Representative
We started this bill on March 23rd. It was the first time we've listened to it and, in 15. I think I'd like to see it on the calendar for next week to vote. And move on.
Straw poll thumbs up for that, Rep. Vincent.
I'm voting twice.
Next week, when we have a full committee.
I'll be here. I will. Promise. It's a campaign promise. And it's not
That
false.
better not be fake
It's not
news.
false advertising.
That's
Not
not fake
AI.
news.
Yeah, it's not.
So
Just, yeah.
I don't know about-
I feel like we've run the gauntlet for this
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah,
We have-
Yep, okay. We've got some work on S59, but Lisa's gonna be coming back up, so we'll hit the pause button for a couple minutes till 11:30 and just start on time.
Mr. Can I just clarify? So you don't want any changes? You don't want 3.2 is what you want to see on Monday or Tuesday? I guess Tuesday.
No.
Okay.
As is. Yeah, let's just.
All right.
look at it, but
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, sure.
Should add jail time.